Congressman Fulcher. Congressman, how are you today?
Hey, Kevin, I'm doing okay. Thank you.
Well, Congressman, before we get going about the government shutdown, I've got to ask you your thoughts on Joe Biden and saying that the auto workers need a raise. I know we all need a raise, and I know we're all Americans, but your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting to me. I haven't followed it extremely close, but it's interesting to me. Here's a guy who's going out and telling the auto workers if they need a raise, and he's the one who set all the policies that is putting so much pressure on them and on the auto companies with trying to force everything over to electric vehicles. So I think Joe's kind of got another one of those double speak issues going on, and you probably just better stay in Washington, D.C. and away from the picket lines.
Well, it does seem odd when you think about it, though. He's the reason why there are eventually going to be a lot of cutbacks of the American car manufacturers, and yet he's out there on the picket lines. And again, as an American, you say to yourself, a president on the picket lines, is that really presidential?
No, but he's desperate for votes and for support. I mean, he says he doesn't watch the polls. They all say they don't want to watch the polls, but the bottom line is they do. And so this is another one of those ploys. But it looks to me like people are seeing through it. Even the unions are slow to embrace him again. And why wouldn't they be? I mean, they can see the writing on the wall. If this gets forced, not only does it put us in a tremendously bad place from an energy production and energy consumption perspective, but it guts a lot of our industries. So, yeah, I can see where he's got some real problems for himself, and I don't think walking the picket line is going to have the benefits that he thinks it does.
Well, what do you make of the polls? And again, a lot can happen between now and Election Day, but showing that President Trump is back and winning.
Well, people are frustrated, Kevin. I mean, we hear it all the time, and they get continually irritated every time they go to the gas pump or every time they go to the grocery store. There's just this reminder of just how wrong things are. And so it's policy, you know, it goes back to the age-old statement, it's the economy stupid, and I'd say it's more than that. It really is more than that, but that's what is that irritating reminder every single day. And so either those who like Trump or those who dislike Trump, the economy pre-COVID was very, very good under his policies. And so people do remember that, and they're willing to put up with a lot of irritation to get back to a point where we had some good economic policy. And frankly, it carried over to foreign stuff. We were very decisive. We had very good foreign policy. We had strong leadership at the top, and you may not always agree with who the person was, but it's difficult to agree with most of the policies. So people remember that. Also, I think it's a factor of how much, the intelligence community, the DOJ, how much they've gone after them. You know, people are saying, wait a minute here, isn't it the people's decision who becomes the president? You know, they want to make that decision for themselves. I think coming up in November, and the more the DOJ and the FBI and the administration goes after Trump in an attempt to try to keep him out, I think people get offended and they're saying, wait a minute, this is our call. You guys stay the heck out.
Our great friend, Congressman Russ Fulcher, joining us. Kevin Mill in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. So, Congressman, what is the mood like on the Hill right now?
Well, it's probably kind of sleepy. I think most of us got off the floor about a little bit after 1 a.m. this morning, and re-engaged this morning with our first series of meetings kicking off at 7. And frankly, that needs to happen. And so the issue over the spending is coming to a head where our fiscal year ends here at the end of September. That's when the rubber meets the road when it comes to what happens with the budget, what happens with the shutdown, or is there a shutdown and all that. We're way too late in addressing a lot of these things, but as is human nature on controversial things, they have a tendency to get pushed to the last. So you know what, we're going to be working through the night for the next few days, and that's the way it ought to be. But I am, as you know, an optimistic person. There was some pretty good progress made yesterday. Kevin, I don't know exactly where it's going to lead, but we did have some pretty good progress through the House yesterday.
Congressman Russ Fulcher joining us, Kevin Mill in the morning. Congressman, you're a loyal guy. You're a fair guy. What do you make of the criticism of Speaker McCarthy?
Well, I think he's the one who's at the top in the House, and so you're going to get criticism because that just is part of the job, and then the House as a whole deserves criticism. All of us do. So that's first and foremost. I think what a lot of people don't see is that there's a lot of independent cats that are running around on Capitol Hill, and there's some who arguably have motives that are self-serving, and that's difficult to manage. And so he's in the midst of that. I had a very small exposure to a similar situation when I was in the state legislature in a leadership role, and there was just a much smaller group of people. But even though you've got the best possible intentions and you're trying to do the right thing for everyone, sometimes that's just a difficult place to be.
It is. Everybody, everybody looks at the backup quarterback as the answer, but few can win the game. What will it take, do you believe? Now, again, there's two schools of thought, sir, and again, pardon my ignorance on this, but that's why we have you on to inform us. But there's two schools of thought, and I don't know if there's still enough time where one proposal is you take one set of issues like the border and the military and you pass that, and then, or you pass the whole thing. And I'm sorry, there's three. And then there's the one where you give Congress a 2-week extension to get this done. You know the details behind every scenario, whether it's in Idaho or across the country, sir. How do you see this stalemate coming to an end?
Well, for those of us in the House, spending cuts are key. That's what we're trying to get to. And in order to get that, you have to have a reason, and you have to have a fiscal vehicle to do it. The path we're on is not sustainable. We're $33 trillion in debt. It is truly at a critical time. And so in the House, what we have done is we've identified the homeland security issue, the border security, as the issue, because most of us, even including some of our friends on the Democrat side, see that as a critical issue. And my goodness, it certainly is. I mean, it has been for a long time, but you have to have that vehicle as leverage to say, okay, look, this is where we're drawing the line. Nothing moves unless we agree that this is going to go into effect. Now, the Senate, I'll get to this in just a second, they're going after the FAA bill. That's their vehicle where they're saying this is what we all got to agree on. Now we're saying, no, it's Homeland Security. And so here we go. You hear about this continuing resolution, and that is a tool. It's a possible tool in order to obtain whatever your objectives are, and it can be used for good and it can be used for bad. As for me personally, if it takes a few extra days to get to the spending cuts, I'm fine with that. If it is used in order to avoid the spending cuts, I'm not fine with that. So that's what's coming up in terms of this discussion over the continuing resolution. Where we disagree on the House front is over the function of trust, because there's a fear that if we pass these bills as a group or as a minibus, then everybody's going to just vote for the higher levels, and we miss the mark of cutting spending. And so that's why you see pressure on passing the rules, which have to be done before the bill's done. And so yesterday we made a lot of progress, or last night we passed the rules for 4 bills: Ag, Department of Defense, Homeland Security, State and Foreign Ops. And so now we're going through those bills one at a time with amendments or proposed amendments. And that's a pretty good way to make sure that overall spending for each bill doesn't get out of control, and that's what a lot of people are trying to do, myself included. So what we're looking at, Kevin, is some pretty significant cuts to everything except for defense and for disaster relief, and of course the mandatory spending, which is your Social Security and Medicare. But everything else is really on the block, and so there's some serious action going on here. And I apologize about just going on, but in the meantime, the Senate has passed they haven't passed any appropriations or any bills like that, but what they've done is they put out a proposal to keep things going with a huge increase in spending for Ukraine, and that's a showstopper for a lot of people in the House. So once we get this solved in the House, then there's the inevitable confrontation with the Senate.
Well, and again, Congressman Russ Fulcher, you can go on and on and on here on KIDO Talk Radio. We love the knowledge. But, it's odd that you have the media, once again, our friends, and I say that sarcastically, pitting the House against the Senate here. Now they're saying that, Speaker McCarthy can't do things, so the great Chuck Schumer, who we all know and love, is going to rescue us, and even Mitch McConnell taking shots at the House. But, getting back to this, it's about spending cuts, and they're not very massive. They're just, sane. But what do you make of the media and even the Senate taking shots at the House? That's not, look, you bring people together all the time. That's not conducive to solving the problem.
No, it's not. And with all due respect to my friends on the other side of the building here, they haven't done anything. I mean, they've not gone through these approaches. They've not gone through the rules. They've not restructured the budget. What they have done is taken a largely partisan few paragraphs of a stopgap plan and said, hey, look, just give us a little bit more money for another 30 days or so. We'll keep things going. We'll send more money to Ukraine, and we'll worry about all this other stuff later. So, no, sorry, you guys haven't showed up for work. We're working. We may not be successful. We're grinding the sausage, and we're gonna send you 12 bills that you're going to have to either pass or shoot down or mark up. But unfortunately, that's because you won't do it yourself. So that's my feelings on Mr. Schumer and his leadership over there.
All right, Congressman, we always ask permission. Do we have you for another segment or not, sir?
Yes, sir. That'd be great.
More coming up with Congressman Fulcher concerning a possible shutdown, how to avoid it, and spending cuts. And we'll talk about the committees that he's on and how those impact Idaho next with Kevin Miller on Idaho's talk station, KIDO Talk Radio. That's our friend Congressman Russ Fulcher joining us. Congressman, great to have you back here. So is this the only thing going on in Congress, or are there other things going on, sir?
Oh, my goodness. There is a ton going on today, Kevin. I was trying to do my prep before your call, and just in the committees that I serve on, energy and commerce and natural resource, there's just a bucket load of stuff going on. We're in energy and commerce. We've got multiple hearings. One is on brownfield reauthorization. People say, what is the heck of that? That's typically EPA-related things, where there's ground that has been contaminated via some industrial site or some chemical spill or whatever all over the country. We have a lot of those sites. On the funds to reauthorize that, what should be done, in what areas, under what circumstances, what are we willing to pay for, what's not, especially with the funds heavily likely to be cut towards EPA. So that one's on the docket. In a separate hearing, we've got what's called right to repair. It's a controversial issue where auto manufacturers versus aftermarket repair shops are in a fight because the automakers don't want to give the codes, your data codes, to the aftermarket guys because they want to do the repairs in-house at the manufacturing mechanics, and the aftermarket people are upset about that. And there's truly arguments both ways on that. But your car now with these computers and onboard information is like a data storage center itself, and it brings into question who owns the data that's generated on the car when you drive. It includes not just your location, but how fast you win, your RPMs, your the temperature, all, you name it. Who owns that data? And, if it's not the driver, if it's not the owner of the car, then it can be used for everything, just like what you have in Facebook and Twitter where people sell it and all that kind of stuff. So that's it. In the Natural Resource Committee, which is the other one that I deal with, we've got a problem in different parts of the country where these so-called sanctuary cities are using what little federal property they got, like parks and facilities that the whole country pays for. In New York recently at Floyd Bennett Field, and they're using it to house unsheltered illegal migrants. And some of us have a problem with that. You guys want to be sanctuary cities? Okay, then great. Then you guys figure out how to pay for it and don't ask the taxpayer to do it. And so I say that sarcastically. I don't think it's great being a sanctuary city. There shouldn't be such a thing. So anyway, while the budget stuff is going on, we got a few other things going on too, and that's just the hearings that I'm in today.
Well, let's get back to energy. That's so important. And here we have the administration with their whole take on energy, anything but American energy. And, Congressman Fulcher, it's funny, your segment is getting a cult-like following here on the Kevin Miller program. I had somebody the other day send me these photos of these giant windmill components traveling on Idaho highways. And they said, ask Congressman Fulcher about this. How can we stop these windmills? And obviously you've been working to, have accountability to stop the Lava Ridge project. But these crazy windmills, whether it's in New Jersey killing whales or in Idaho killing everything else, are causing a lot of damage. And yet the administration is in love with them.
Well, in that particular case, Kevin, my personal approach and one of the pieces of legislation that I've written and working on right now is when it comes to energy, no government subsidies. And people say, what does that have to do with anything? It has everything to do with it because windmills, for example, in most cases, are not economically viable unless the taxpayer subsidizes it. It's in most places, it's the most expensive form of energy you can get. You never know for absolute certain when it's going to be there. And what you pay, what you pay to import these massive machines, which mostly come out of places like China, because we won't allow ourselves to mine the materials to make those big blades in the U.S. So we buy it from, usually a foreign enemy. Then we put the things in place, and then we have to transmit the power somewhere. For each one of those turbines, and the transmission is outrageously expensive. So my argument is, okay, if it's such a good idea, then don't make the taxpayer pay for it, and make it work on its own. Now there are some places where it does work. If you've got a place where you can site that's close to a power plant and you can transmit it cheap and whatnot, great. Then make it work. The developer, the investors for that, see them make money and they go out and they get it done. But if not, don't ask me to pay for it. Same thing with solar cells. We don't create that internally. We buy them from other places, and it's a great idea. In some cases, it works. But in a lot of these places where there's these big solar fields and whatnot, most of the time it makes no sense. So get the government the heck out of subsidizing it, or the projects work. The market will dictate what's efficient and will drive the cost down. So that's how I'm attempting to approach that internally. We are making some headway. It's been just bringing that to light internally has been real discouraging for some of the Lava Ridge folks, because Lava Ridge makes no sense if you take away the subsidy. And then the developers know that. And so if they feel threatened that they're going to lose their taxpayer subsidy, they'll stay the heck away from there.
Our great friend Congressman Fulcher joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Let's go to a couple of your other committees here, then we'll close out with the border. But let's get to natural resources. Obviously, we have a lot of natural resources in Idaho, lithium among many, and yet there's a problem with getting natural resources. And again, you as a native Idahoan for many generations, sir, you know all about the timber industry that was, but isn't now.
Yeah, and we've seen countless sawmills across our state and the Pacific Northwest as a whole just get shut down because of lawsuits, because of lack of access to the federal resource. We have this tendency to want to allow it to just burn up and kick all that carbon into the atmosphere rather than clean it up. And so that's another huge issue that's been really exacerbated in Idaho since at least the mid '80s, and it's gotten progressively worse. And so have the fires as a result of that. And so in natural resources, that's one of the things that we're attempting to deal with. It is how you manage these lands. The federal government has been way overwhelmed in management. They don't have the resources to do it, and so for the most part, they don't. And that's not a criticism to the Forest Service and the BLM folks that are out there, the good people that are out there. It's just that's the scope of the issue. When they do get a project, we've got private so-called environmental groups that try to just sue first and ask questions later that prevent these projects from taking place, thinking and stating that this is somehow environmentally friendly when it's just the reverse. By not taking care of your resources, you oftentimes turn it into a cost center, and it burns up with wildfire and the expense of fire suppression. So it becomes a lose-lose deal. And so my contention and everything that I argue with here is it's the local shareholders are the real environmentalists, the people who want to take care of this resource and make it sustainable over time. So that is a primary battle within natural resources, and it's very pertinent to Idaho because so much federal land is in Idaho. We're one of only 5 states that more than 50% of the land mass is federal. And so and it impacts us, and that's an education process because most of my colleagues don't even know that.
Right.
And so a lot of ongoing issues there, but we've got, to your point, Kevin, we've got everything we need in abundance. It's just coming up with the policies that allows us to responsibly access it instead of buying it illegitimately harvested from our enemies.
Our great friend, Congressman Fulcher, will get you out on this one, sir. You've been to the border many times. The border is overwhelmed. Even New York and California, well, not California, New York and other states are sounding the alarm. Illinois, they say this is just crazy. And yet we have the administration, and let me give you a two-parter, where the administration says there is a secure border. In between, a report from Axios saying now the president's incapable of going up the main stairs on Air Force One. He's got to go on the back stairs because they're worried about the optics of him falling again. So we have a falling president, a failing border policy. Congressman Fulcher, your thoughts on both?
Well, on the border, it is absolutely, positively not secure. And it's not secure on purpose because the administration, a lot of my colleagues, they want it open. And the reason they do is because it's part of a strategy to flood this country with millions, and I do mean millions, of non-citizens, get them addicted to subsidies, and hopefully win their loyalty at the ballot box. And this is a long-term strategy, and I got to say, in that sense, it's working. But they are willing to allow the illegal drugs. They're willing to allow the foreign adversaries to cross as a cost of achieving what they're really trying to achieve. Not to segue too much, Kevin, but here's an interesting point. We got information yesterday that just by implementing this Homeland Security bill, that'll save us a minimum $150 billion a year, just because that's just the cost of what the benefits are for the illegals that are coming in at this pace. So there's $150 billion a year savings if we just get this Homeland Security bill passed, and that's one of the reasons why the House has dug in so hard to leverage that piece of legislation. But it is a tragedy, but it's also on purpose, and that's what people need to know. In terms of the president, you're absolutely right. The guy is, unfortunately and very sadly, deteriorating. He's deteriorating before the nation's eyes. I don't see any way that he can truly be the horse that the Democrats try to run with on the ballot in November of next year. I think their energy is really trying to behind the scenes, figure out an alternative and save face. And they have a real challenge because number two is not a halt. There's not a lot much more confidence in her than in Joe. And so it's very sad on a personal level. That family, I can't even imagine, the rationalization they must go through to say, Dad, Grandpa, husband, whatever, you need to keep doing this, because he's woefully unprepared at this stage to do what he's doing. Democrats know that. We're going to see, I think, a different candidate come November of next year. How they do it will be interesting.
Congressman Fulcher, we sure appreciate you. I know you're going to be working overtime. Thank you again for your time, sir.
My pleasure, Kevin. Have a great day.